Thank you to all you brave souls to come out in this weather. We really appreciate that. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Corinne Ernie. I'm the Chief Curator here at the parish. And I'm really pleased to be talking with HIROYUKI HAMADA tonight. He is our 2023 Parish Roadshow artist. And every year we invite regional artists to do a site-specific work in a place of their choice. Usually it's a public space, it could be a park, a highway, community center, anywhere where the artists feel inspired. And so before we get started, I want to thank a few people. I want to thank, first and foremost, our assistant curators, Caitlin Halloran and Brianna Hernandez, who curated the show. So Caitlin is here tonight. I also want to thank the sponsors who supported the show, Jane Wesman and Donald Savilson, and Suffolk County. I want to thank the South Fork Natural History Museum and Nature Center in Bridgehampton, where the exhibition is taking place. It will be up until October 10th, so please go visit when the weather is a little better. I think Sunday. So I also want to thank the Corcoran Group, who sponsors our Friday nights programs. So I want to give a little bit of background about HIROYUKI. He was born in Japan in 1968 and now lives in East Hampton with his family. His studio practice includes sculpture, painting, and prints. He has exhibited locally at the Art Center at Duck Creek and Guildhall in East Hampton, the List Gallery at Swarthmore College, Halsey Institute of Contemporary Art in Charleston, South Carolina. And he also has shown in Seoul, South Korea at the Ghana Art Boang, and in New York City at Bookstein Projects and OK Harris Works of Art, where he began his solo exhibition career with wall-hanging sculptures. So HIROYUKI has also twice received the New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowships in Sculpture. In 2018, he was awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship, and in 2020, he was named the recipient of the Paula Krasner Mid-Career Residency at the Princeton Fine Arts Work Center. So welcome, HIROYUKI. Thank you. So I want to start by a quote that you actually wrote in the newsletter of SOFO about your practice, and that I wanted to ask you to elaborate a bit on. So you say, we the artists do operate within the social formation, fully subjected to the imperatives of our time and space, but just as nature often defies human attempts to contain and domesticate, art does reach out beyond the social framework in addressing what it is to be human. It's a beautiful quote.
Right. Well, I mean, when I'm in the studio, I try to look at what the materials are doing, and I just observe and follow what they want to do. So it's sort of like looking at what's real and reacting to it, and try to resonate with something in front of me. And so I think there is an inherent honesty and something connected to fundamental dynamics of things. Mm-hmm. So when I think of that, nature is a lot like that. You know, it's its own rule, which goes beyond what we try to impose on nature. And so I always have this sense that when I'm working in the studio doing things, I'm connected to something bigger. Mm-hmm. So
let's unpack that a little bit in terms of process. So obviously, you choose to work with certain materials, and can you talk a little bit about what informs your choice of materials, and how do you go from there? I know you also do drawings and prints, and I'm also interested, do you start with a drawing, and then do you go three-dimensional, or how How does that work?
I think the beginning usually is coming from drawings. That's how I started making
Right.
things as well. Just lines, shapes, and just tone shifts, and all those things on piece of paper could say something, which really is sort of magical, something mysterious and very, very powerful as well. The fact that we can recognize certain formations and a certain rhythm and a certain something adds something profound. So I like to draw, and so that's something I've been doing from the beginning, and it's
Do you think of sculpture when you draw, or is
no,
that
really,
completely
I
separate?
actually try to kind of empty myself, try to have a dialogue with what comes out in front of me, and that leads to something else, and that leads to something else, and at the end, there's a structure that comes from this communication, dialogue, and that becomes the structural elements at the end. So there is a process and a way to go about it, but the mechanism is always kind of hidden to me as well. It's something I tap into, and I come out with something, and but I don't really dictate what's going to happen. I don't really manipulate things. I don't really go in with wishful thinking. I mean, I would, you know, I would want things to happen, and that's always surprising. So there is this sense of mystery, something I don't know about, and I have a connection to it, and that's where everything starts, I think.
It does show the mystery and the surprise, but also an incredible harmony in your work. So let's start with the material. When you choose the material for the sculptures, what kind of material do you use, and why do you use that material?
Right, the materials are really, they evolved since I was doing paintings. I started out as a painter, drawings, and drawings led to paintings, and I was interested in texture and object likeness, and so that really brought the two-dimensional to three-dimensional slowly. So it came out of the wall, in a sense, naturally. It's not like I was intending to be, I'm gonna make sculpture, you know. It's more like, by the time I realized they were sculptures, and so
you didn't study sculpture in art school?
actually, no.
No. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's something I had to learn. I had to.
You developed it by yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so the materials, I just started with things that are available, so things that are readily I had access to. Like
So resin or?
well, resin was a quite popular material. It's easy to work with, and it cures overnight pretty fast. And but before that, I was using plaster. Plaster would be, you know, you can go get them anywhere, and it's really easy to do things with. It's really flexible material, and wood, that's something else as well. Um, 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 I could be pretty flexible because at the beginning I was really using the material to paint on it. I would make pieces that might look like sculptures, but I think initially I was more like painting on three-dimensional painting kind of thing. So I was not too conscious about shapes in the space, I think. It took, I think it took 10, 20 years to realize that this is something, this is a really serious thing. This is, and at that time I realized that this is sculpture.
Right. And how do you treat color? How do you decide on the color of a sculpture and the details? Because some of them look like stone, right? In the end, they look like stone or wood. So you give them a sort of a different kind of patina or a different nature.
Right. I really go intuitively, but at the end, you look back and think about it, they make sense. You know, the sense of weight will be different if it looks like stone. The sense of weight will be different when it's wood in certain ways.
So they're pretty lightweight, but they look like they're heavier in a way.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Even marble comes to mind. So it's almost like imitating certain materials that it is not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And what is the intention for that?
I think, you know, different materials has different dynamics physically. They would have certain indications, symbolic manifestations, and all those things are elements in the wholeness. And but I don't really try to analyze things when I'm making things. I try to let them speak. Let them interact and let them come up with dynamics. So it is more tools. You know, you have more expressions and you have more tools.
Yeah, you have said that you work very slowly, right? So I guess that's what you mean also by contemplation. It takes you let it sit, or you let it interact with you, or you interact with the material, and
Right.
So it's a very organic process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really organic. That's really a good way to put it. It's and it takes time to see things. Sometimes you would go in with a certain mindset, and next day you would see it differently, and next day you would see it differently. But there are things that are fundamental, and those things sort of remain and becomes essential quality, and to me they really come out slowly. It's not like it's not a fast process, although sometimes things could go really fast. It's like I'm sort of like...
What determines that?
I don't really know. Sometimes I feel like I'm guided and the things kind of one things lead to another, and things happen really, really fast. And so it's a very, very interesting process. You never know. Like you'll be working on something for a couple of years, and you will be sort of jaded. You'll be sort of um, starting to lose interest and starting to get frustrated, and but suddenly things things could shift really fast, and things could merge into something significant. So it's really um, it's an interesting process. I can't get enough of it, I guess.
Right. We have some images coming up from the show at SOFO, and I want you to talk a little bit about those sculptures. So this one, for example, you know, how long would it take you, for example, to make this work? And here you actually are combining it with wood, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? Also, all the sculptures that you have at SOFO, why you chose those, how that came together, and as I understand, it was the first time you made sculptures for outdoors.
So I so two of the pieces were already made, and but I wanted to do a few more pieces that are meant for outside from scratch, not from the very basic ideas, because I already had kind of like a really, really rough idea of shape. And so...
And did the place or the space inspire you? The place at SOFO, was that inspiring to you to make these sculptures that you made new?
Right. I try to kind of imagine them to be over there when I was working in my studio. I mostly worked outside for those ones. There's a overhang space outside of my space, and so that I could see different kind of lights.
Okay.
And I mean, it is different hearing the noise, and the air is different outside, and so yeah.
Sorry. This is one that you're showing. That's one of the works, right? That you're showing. There's also one sculpture that looks almost like a hand. It's not here right now, but I'll point it out. But can you talk a little bit about that? Are they all completely abstract, or is there sometimes a thought behind it of a shape that you're trying to achieve?
Right. Well, especially when I was beginning, I really avoided things that are recognizable. I really wanted to get to this mysterious place, something profound, but you don't know what it is, kind of thing. And so that's still my basic approach. I don't really try to do specific things.
That's
it's coming
another
up
one
right.
that's right now. That's
Right.
at the SOFO. Yeah, which could be seen almost like a swan, or
Right. You're talking about that one, right?
that's the hand. That's
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, that's interesting. You see it as a hand.
My imagination.
Right. I mean, I see it as sort of playful.
Yeah.
To me, it looks like kind of like a creature or something.
Okay.
And
Great.
but hand, me,
Well, it's great that everybody has a different interpretation.
Right,
To
right.
your point.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, I can talk about these things when it's done, but when I'm making things, I try to kind of stay away from trying to analyze, see things in the shape, and I just try to feel the shape as it is. I think that's the way for me to connect to this place things are coming from, kind of.
Right. I'm curious about your trajectory as an artist. You came here from Japan, that's where you grew up, and we had a little bit of a chat after your opening, and you told me your story, and I found it really fascinating. You were growing up, you never thought you would leave Japan, and then your father decides to move to the US. And can you talk a little bit about what happened then and how you decided to become an artist?
Right. So I grew up in Japan, and I was 18 when my family had to move to the States for a few years because of my father's job. And but at the time, I was not really. I wasn't into art at all. I was sort of like, typical teenager. I would say rebellious. I was not really adjusted to how things are. Very frustrated, very angry kind of young man, and
That's hard to imagine.
so. After I learned English a little bit, I started to take classes at a community college, and one of the classes I took was art class. I think it was a drawing class,
Okay.
And that was the first time I really saw art. And before that, I had no idea the visual art as something with the strength of literature, music, the kind of things that could really move you and make you feel like you're alive. And so I was really shocked that could happen on a piece of paper, just random, markings. And and it happened between me and the teacher who grew up here and spoke different language, totally different cultural background. So it was really profound for me because, it's stronger than the language, because I could see.
Maybe was it a way for you to express yourself in a way that maybe wasn't possible with language at first?
Right, right. Yeah, I was having a hard time communicating, but when I saw his work, it was obvious that they were speaking to me, and it was really strange because that was the first time I saw art. So, and I think the fact that I encountered that sort of late in life was sort of critical factor, and it just blew me away, I guess.
And from then on, you decided to be an artist, and that's what
Right. I mean, I was pretty much stuck in my place, making whatever. I started to take other classes, and I at the time I was also interested in psychology, and I was actually trying to major in psychology, and I switched to major in art because it was just obvious. It was just so strange and revealing about who I was and what I could do. And so I had a really, really concentrated time in terms of my training, I guess, how to see things visually, how to use my hands,
Right.
hours and hours every day.
Right.
And
Yeah. What's interesting to me when I look at your work, and it strikes me that I feel like there is a very sort of strong, if I may say, Japanese aesthetic. You know, the notion of beauty, the harmony, the forms, but also the imperfection, or seeking the beauty in the imperfection. The surface that is slightly, you know, looks slightly unfinished or raw. Do you think there is, or could you say that it does have a Japanese aesthetic, or do you not see that? Or I'm just curious how you respond to that.
right, that's an interesting thing. So that's something people kept asking me. But at the same time, if we look at the history of contemporary modern art, those things are also actually the element of major progression in how we see things. So there's a parallel between things you would see, like you look at de Kooning, Jackson Pollock,
Right.
the major figures, you do see sense of the rusticness in the marks, and so I think yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I guess I'm still kind of I'm kind of wondering about that all the time as I grow, and but I do see what you mean. I will go back to Japan and to see architecture, architecture in particular. I guess how materials are finished, how the gardens are part of the structures in a way that kind of implies larger world around us, and so. And when I look at those things, I think I have the same feeling when I'm looking at my work as well sometimes. So there's definitely relationships.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about nature as well. So do you think living out here has influenced your work? Let's say, as opposed if you had been living, if you were living in a city, in an urban environment.
Right. I think initially I wasn't really thinking about it, but I think the feeling the sense of time through nature, seasons changing. I like to grow things in the garden. I plant trees and things, and it's really nice to feel the cycles happening, and also things I see. It's just pretty amazing to see all those different shapes and creatures being in harmony with how the seasons change, and so I think feeling that is uh, part of being in the studio in a way. I would go outside and look at things and come back in, and I would listen to music and go back to work. And um, um, uh, I think I, I think as an artist, you take in everything around you, and
For sure.
it becomes part of it in
Yeah.
some ways, I think.
Definitely. And do you think the fact that you now have done works for outdoors, or that you're showing outdoors for the first time, is that inspiring you to do more work for outdoor sculptures, or how do you see that?
It really took a while to put things outside of my studio, and I think things happen really slow in my studio, and I let them do things. So it was something I was thinking for a long time. I was thinking about I could put this pieces or that and have it part of outside space, or I could do it in different materials and I could do this or that. But it was really not something I went out and did. So I think it was great that I was sort of a bit forced to be in a situation, and I think that's natural. You know, I really think making art is about. I think the social aspect is a big part of it. It's not just about me working in the studio. Anything that comes from outside is valid part of the how things would shift in the studio. So I think I think I would feel a little more open now that I did a little bit.
Well, that's great. I'd like to see more of it. And it's interesting because I've been following your work for a while. I saw your show at Guildhall, and then the pandemic happened. And there was this drive-by art that Warren Neidig organized, and artists put their works outside so people could drive by and look at the work. And that's when I saw your work outside for the first time. And that's when my idea also started to sort of take form, that I would like to do something with you outdoors. So, you know, it was kind of like these coincidences, or we were forced during the pandemic. You were forced a little bit, you know, through roadshow to go a different way. And I think it's always interesting to, you know, get people out of their comfort zone.
Right. Yeah, and I'm totally like that in my studio as well. I think everything counts when you're in the studio, and I'm really observant of how things are. And then most of the time, when I notice something, it's not when I'm intending. Like I would work all day, and I would have one last look, and before I turn off the lights, and I would see something, and I would keep working.
What are the tools that you're actually working with?
Well, so it's sort of similar to the materials. I would reach out to anything that I could might get my hands on. Power tools. I have quite a few pieces that I've done with drill bits.
Okay.
Making textures with drill bits. I would I think I try to do whatever I can do, and when you have different way of putting things together, I think you start to see things differently as well. You know, just instead of just using brushes and so.
And do you assemble different pieces, or is it usually one, or does that vary?
I think it varies. Sometimes the whole thing would emerge as a shape, but sometimes I would start from one thing, and that thing would later find other parts. So I would make something and somehow fail to come to term with the direction, and that would sit in my studio,
Right.
And one day that would find ways to make sense out of itself.
And do you usually work on one piece, or do you work on different pieces at once?
I usually have quite a few pieces.
Okay.
I like to have um, um, different places to go so that I don't get too attached with narrow set of approaches. I think it helps me to see things a little more objectively if I have quite a few pieces. And also, having different pieces really helps to cultivate the dynamics between the pieces. Sometimes the idea from one thing would pass on to something else.
Right.
And so right now I think I have 5, 6, 7, something like that, pieces in my studio.
Okay. Well, I think we can open it up to the audience. See if anybody has any questions. Yes, Steve?
Yeah, hi, HIROYUKI. I guess it's a similar question to what you said about weight. When I look at these things, they look like they could be like black granite or marble, and when you see them outside, they feel heavy because I project onto the material my sense of weight, even though I know they're made of something else. Would you work with stone, given, unlimited budget and, all the other things that, being able to move the stuff around? Is the fluidity of the material that you're working with now mean something to you as opposed to getting involved with something like really obdurate, like marble and granite?
That's a really interesting question. I would say I might, but my sense is that I probably won't for any time in near future, because I think I do enjoy the fact that the surface could be different. I could do things with the surface and kind of change the dynamics that way. And I think it comes from being a painter. I know that sculptors could be really, really attached to the sense of material. Like Noguchi would say that the piece is already residing in the thing, and the material and everything else, and you're releasing that in a way. But I think I see it a little differently. I have ways to combine things in different ways. But I am interested in different materials. It's fascinating. Why would anyone want to move like 200 pounds, a little piece of something? It's even wood. If it's solid wood, I mean, you would need big machines to move them, and but there is something. There is something to the material the inherent something, including the weight. And I think I'm starting to see that as well. So I'll see, I guess. Yeah.
I guess we'll see. Any other questions for Hiroyuki? Yes?
Yes, I'm interested to know how you create the skeleton and those beautiful curves. It doesn't look like wood on the beautiful curves. I'm kind of interested in how you created those shapes.
So I work with, well, I have drawings, and I like to work with shapes and lines. So that's where it gets translated in many, many ways. And when I have actual materials, I make a basic shape inside of what you're looking at, which is resin. So I would have wood and foam, the insulation foam. So I would shape the thing, and so I would have actual the basic shape of it, and then the skin part goes on, and when it does, it um, um,
And that is soft and malleable as you put it on.
um, it is. Um, um, well, that's actually a very interesting question, because yeah, like it's really like I was saying at the beginning. The process is really not straightforward. Um, Sometimes I would have the shape, and it gets changed a little bit because of the surface, and I don't hesitate to go back in and change a little bit um, um, if it needs to be, and and I think I think that's really important part of what I'm doing. I'm not like coming up with things in my head. I'm actually putting together actual materials, and when you do, things happen. The surprises and layers of surprises by the time you get to the final. The part, the shaping the thing would have surprises, using certain kind of materials that it gives surprises. And so, um, yeah, um, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Yes.
You talked about creating something that's larger than yourself, more important than yourself. When you're creating, do you feel as if you're the creator or the instrument, or both?
Or it's more like a facilitator of some kind. Um, it's like almost like I'm not really the one who's doing it. I'm just there witnessing things just happening.
You
And
feel as if sometimes you're more of an instrument,
right. I think so.
sort of like.
I mean, it would be so boring if it just comes out of my head. It's like, things I could imagine. That's really limited. But when I have this connection to larger something, things happen, and it's quite amazing when it happens. It's like, like when you're in the studio and it just nothing matters. You have this moment with something. Um, it just emerged, and it's not me at all. It's I don't know.
So when you're in the studio, you don't have any distractions. You don't look at the phone. You don't have anything.
I do.
You do. Okay.
But that's a good.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Right. But I mean, I'm pretty secluded. My studio is away from the house, and I'm pretty confident that I don't get a knock on the door at night. And but when things happens in the studio, I just take it as it is. Just take it as part of whatever. It's just meant to be that way. So accidents could happen. I might drop something, and then I would think really hard that does this need to be fixed, or maybe it's meant to be this way, or it's interesting.
So there's the famous question, right? When does an artist know that a work is finished? So.
Well, that could be pretty strikingly obvious. I would be struck with something, oh my God, all right, I'm done.
Okay.
But at the same time, sometimes I go back to the studio next day and then, oh my God, it's
not
horrible.
done.
It's what have I done? And so it takes time sometimes to familiarize myself to what's really going on, not just the surface level, but a deeper level, and it sometimes takes time to realize that it's done as well.
Yeah.
I would have something in my studio and thinking that I'll just leave it for now. And one day I would look at it, wow, all right, I understand this thing was done. I just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But the fact that I stopped, I probably could see it a little bit. So sometimes it's hard to see. It's
Do you ever ask someone else what they think if it's done, or
I try not to do that because
Okay.
it's really
it's your work?
right.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Comments? Yeah, please.
When you said you had your first art class in a community college and the art spoke to you, do you remember that art? Was it abstract art? I was curious what type of art it was that moved you.
I think it was abstract kind of drawings, and then I've seen his a little more abstract, figurative works, and they were as strong as those other ones. And I think you really have to see them in person because how the lines are put on the paper, even the texture of the paper, and those things are all part of something. So it's really hard to learn about art. I mean, I've taken classes when I was a kid, and when I was a kid, I was really into making things and drawings, and but I didn't understand that you can combine those things and have some kind of wholeness that could really speak to you. And so it could be something else, but to me it was abstract kind of things.
Are you still in touch with that professor?
Well, he passed away, and but I have some of his works, so every time I see them, I'm really it kind of fills me up. It still speaks to me. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Hiroyuki.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And I just want to say that there are some catalogs that you can have, that you can purchase, and Hiroyuki will sign them. And the show is up until October 10th at the South Fork Natural History Museum in Bridgehampton. Thank you.
Thank you so much.